Okay. Can someone confirm if you are able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are able to hear.
Okay. Sure. Okay. So welcome. So this is Ravikant. So I will just to briefly introduce myself. So I've been working in the field of data analytics for almost 12 years, and yeah, I'm here to kind of give you a demo or a session what you're going to learn or with respect to the data engineering, right? So I hope you all understand that this has been a buzzword. I mean, after Hadoop, after so recently everybody is kind of moving into the cloud area, and even the organizations or anyone that you're working for, so they are always thinking on the cloud first. So meaning that whichever solutions or anything that is that they're trying to build, or the existing solutions, if there are new changes, they want to incorporate either one of the cloud technologies, okay, being AWS or even Azure or GCP, Google Cloud Platform. So here we are here to kind of discuss about Azure data engineering content. So what is it that I mean it is offered, or the skills that you need to have to groom yourself up against this latest technology on the Azure side and on the data analytics front. Okay, so yeah, I've been sharing my screen. So this is one of the services that I've been trying to show you. But instead of that, let me actually discuss about what is data engineering, right? So basically, if I have to explain you, I have this way of explaining things on a Word white notebook or kind of on an Excel sheet. So let me take a blank Excel sheet to you. Okay. So yeah, we are here to discuss about the data engineering, right?
लाइक
So
से मैं
earlier,
अभी पे जाऊंगी, यहाँ पे मुझे एक्सेस कंट्रोल ऐप पे जाना है और मुझे क्या करना है, मुझे रोल देना है,
sorry,
सॉरी,
can
उसको
you
एक ये
mute
can you
yourself,
mute
please?
yourself please.
So anyone else is having any other question? Okay, fine. Yeah, I just muted everyone. You're able to hear me, right? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let me just give you a brief introduction of what is data engineering and how we should kind of understand this term in a proper manner. So in one way or the other, I mean, I see that you have been working for one of the organization already, right? And you might be in a different roles, and maybe you wanted to excel in the current role, or to learn the new technology with respect to Azure, and understand things about data analytics, and you might have a passion towards a kind of a you are already working on some kind of an on-premise stack, and you wanted to gear up yourself, or you wanted to turn into a data engineer, basically including the cloud skills that are needed. Okay, so I know like there are different audience here. Okay, but let me. So this term is not kind of a. I mean, coming to the functionality or the a role of a data engineer, right? So that is not something new. I mean, we had data engineers like so ever since 2000, right? So this kind of a relational databases had kicked in, and then we had a different tools, a mix of tools from different technologies, right? From Microsoft, or even from the Oracle, like Oracle Warehouse Builder. There are many technologies are there, but they have been on the on-premise side. Okay, but now what we are going to kind of understand is, uh, we are now considering this boom, or I should say, people or the organization started moving into the cloud area, right? So we should accustom, or we should kind of unlearn and learn new things what are happening on the cloud side of things. And now we are going to discuss about the Azure, Microsoft Azure cloud. And coming to this term that I was referring, right, a data engineer, right? So what he does, so I will say, like, the roles that he performs are just not limited to, I mean, he's doing some development work, right? So when I say development work, unlike a regular any other developer, like who works directly on the code, right? So you there is a situation that you might have to understand some context around how an organization is generating the data. Okay, so when I say a data engineer, so he would be kind of a responsible for a end-to-end process. End-to-end process. So when I say end-to-end process, what does it actually mean, right? So you understand that companies, they kind of organizations or companies, right, or enterprises. So you're hearing the terms here, right? Companies, organization, enterprises. So they are the ones actually who kind of want some insights. Okay, I'm not talking about data. So now the word data is gone. Now they wanted to see insights. What is an insight? Okay, insight is something, a valuable information, right? So somebody purchasing something, or when you're going to a shop or you're purchasing something, so and you have a transaction there and you have its relevant information, right? So that is just the data. But how can you actually turn that into insights? Like, okay, how many people had purchased a similar product, or how many transactions on that product happened on a single day? So that is what is called insight. So an insight, a data is converted into an insight when we actually perform some transformations. So what kind of, when I say transformations, what does it actually mean? I'm kind of converting that data into some useful information. That process of conversion, right? The process of converting that data into an insight. Data to an insight. Okay, so process of converting the data into an insight, that comes after you actually perform some transformation. Okay, you have to understand this fact, and it is important that what are you actually trying to, after learning some data engineering concept or anything, what are you actually trying to learn here? What are you trying to achieve here is, right, simply you need to tell, or you need to have an understanding that my role is to convert the raw data which is generated by huge systems, right? This has to be converted into a good business insight. Okay, that is what a data engineer does. I'm giving you a very real world kind of an example, and that is what we do. I mean, at least whoever is already working on that, that is what they do. Okay, so they provide this data, convert that, transform that, okay, wrangle that. So these are all the different terms that are being used these days. Okay, wrangle that into kind of a useful insight. Okay, so this simply cannot happen on the fly, right? So definitely there'll be some kind of tools that are required. So when I say data, I'm talking about raw data. So raw data can be of any form. Okay. And I'm talking about transformation. Okay. There should be some tool which actually transforms that. Okay. And insights. When I say insights, that is how you actually present to the customer, right? You actually present to the customer. So just to give you an small example. Okay. So I'm just showing you one portal in Microsoft Azure, okay, which is beautifully giving an insights of what has happened regarding my subscription cost. Okay, so if you can see the different allocations that are happened here. So this is what is an insight. So by looking into this, I'm able to understand, okay, where my cost had went into. So my cost had went into spending amount on virtual machines and spending amount for resources in East US, for spending upon information in service tiers. So this is what is an insight. Okay. So for that also, okay, you need tools. Okay. You need to for presenting that. So when I say that, I'll talk about something called Power BI. You understand that Power BI is a tool that provides insights. Okay, so this being more of kind of a front end, or I should say a report developer. Okay, but a data engineer's responsibility like is to kind of provide an end-to-end support right from the extraction of the raw data, okay, keeping it into some storage, and then converting that into uh, transforming that into a kind of a valuable insights. Okay, so this is the actual business process that goes into any, I should say, any enterprise or any company. Okay, no matter what. Okay, any you take any example like Reliance or Mart or wherever, right? So whatever they're trying to do, they're trying to build your things, or if you buy something on Amazon. Okay, so what is that data, where is it going into? Okay, definitely they have been using that and kind of a targeting it on us only. Okay, they're trying to get more information, they're trying to get more that becoming more intelligent by grabbing that information and converting that into powerful insights. Okay, I hope you are kind of understanding or getting the feel of what I'm trying to say here. Okay, so now this one, the one that I have shown you, so this is more of like a kind of a functional introduction, or I should say a business introduction. Okay, what we're actually trying to do. But in the real world, okay, what actually happens is, okay, what actually happens, so you might be having some kind of a on-premise stack. That means when I say on-premise, so an existing system is currently built on-premise world. That means everything resides on-premise. That means in your organization, in your own network. When I say in your own, not your own, basically the company's own network. Okay, but now the things have changed and everything started moving into cloud. Why are we going into cloud? Okay, so the main agenda of why someone goes into cloud is to get better understanding on where the expenditure is going. So earlier what used to happen is, so suppose if at all we had to kind of do something or do some development work. Okay, an organization has to procure the actual servers, they have to install OS, they have to patch the OS, they have to take care of the operations, they have to take care of the maintenance. Okay, now considering the scenario of cloud, Okay, you need not do all that. Okay, you have the cloud environment that does it for you. Okay, so what is happening is there used to be huge number of costs that are incurred in doing all this stuff, and now it is changing in a very faster manner, and everything is moving into cloud. When it moves into cloud, if you see just my subscription alone, you can see that how much insight I'm drawing in. So I'm able to exactly pinpoint on how much I'm spending on SQL database, how much I'm spending on virtual machines, right? How much I'm spending on storage. Okay, this kind of an insight was not there when we were on premise. There were many costs associated. So that means when you are moving to cloud, you are getting much better control. Okay, so remember, see, this is a kind of a practical session, or I should say, I'm explaining the practical scenario, what the enterprises look out for. Okay, why are they actually trying to do all this, right? They have an existing setup. Why don't they simply use it, right? But why are they trying to move? Okay, this is out of pure experience. I'm telling you, this is what the companies are doing now. Okay, so I should say, like, I was a kind of a person who worked on the on-premise stack, only on the on-premise stack, and now I kind of a moved into the cloud area or cloud environment. Started consulting with respect to people approaching for cloud data engineering consultancy and all that. Okay, I can clearly see enterprises doing this particular job, that to slowly started to move. But why? These are the reasons. Okay, they wanted more control on the expenditure. They wanted more control on what's happening on the infrastructure side of any company, IT expenditure. Their ultimate motive is to kind of minimize these costs. Okay, so after going into cloud, you have better control over the expenditures, costs, operation costs, maintenance costs, and everything. Okay, that's the reason companies preferring going into cloud area. Okay, now
What about the
uh,
data security in case of Azure cloud and
yeah,
on premises?
see, yeah, that's a good question. Okay, let me tell you that there are different types of clouds. Okay, one is a kind of a hybrid cloud, and there are cloud which is kind of a public cloud, and as well as kind of a private. Okay, so far we have been I was talking about some kind of a networking, right? You companies having their own network. That means earlier companies used to have their own LAN network. Okay, so if you want a very dedicated environment such that nobody else has to kind of even peep through that what's happening, right? Then they have to go for a on-premise stack only. But that is applicable for a very rare scenarios, right? Like some kind of a very confidential data with respect to some defense or very confidential data with respect to some banking or financial transactions. So that is where I mean they still have an adoption, or they are still on premise. Like I will say, like companies like Wells Fargo or different banking companies, right? Whatever kind of a data or the operation that they wanted to do or they want to restrict within the company, solely within the company, right? They still kind of have them on the on premise. But nowadays, okay, do you really think like everything is a kind of a very has to be very much secured? Even even on the Azure side, right? It actually kind of a has some compliance. It follows the compliance requirements. Okay. Maybe you might have had some understanding if you're kind of a 5-6 years experience. You might have heard about something called GDPR. Okay, where there is this kind of a rule that that every company, right, they should not host the data. They have to host the data within that country itself and not to the other country. Like suppose in case of Azure, right, you have different data centers, East US, and there is a data center for India also. I think there was some time there is some problem with Paytm also, that they are kind of outsourcing their data, or they are moving that data into some of the Chinese servers because they have some kind of agreement and all that. Okay, then the CEO had came back saying that okay, that is not the case. We have our data only in India. Okay, so now even in Azure or even in AWS, you have an option to actually pick up that particular data center. That means you are not allowing your customer data to go into some other country. You're still hosting on your own or in your in your country data center. Okay, but I would say still secure from the security point of view. As I said, like very highly confidential data would still kind of are being managed. But there are ways, right? When I say the network that is around this uh, uh, the resources, right, the network around this, they actually kind of connect to the intranet also. That means your company's network also. Okay, that is nothing but suppose if you have, so every company will have something called active directory. Okay, so this is a kind of a kind of a, you should say, a kind of a bus that actually connects everyone. Okay, suppose if you are on Teams, right, or using this particular active directory, you are basically connecting, or your computer will actually connect to this active directory. So now there is something called Azure Active Directory, and this Active Directory on the on-premise is started interacting with Azure Active Directory. And remember why I'm telling you this. No other I mean, this is not public. That means you are having your own Azure Active Directory. That means your company will have its own VNet. Okay, that means it will have its own networking area where nobody else can actually come and do any kind of a intrusion. Okay, that kind of a security is there in Azure also, and that is the strongest reason why people started to move in confidence. If there was really a data breach and all that, right, so that is not the case. I mean, people can't or the organizations cannot actually move that easily. Okay, and the other thing is there are some sectors, so leaving defense sector or leaving the banking sector, right, where even in banking also, so a few of the things they're kind of a now okay to actually, as I said, right, like Paytm and all that, they're kind of a more have their servers or whatever, right, they should be having in cloud. Okay, but highly confidential data like defense, right, so that is something they still kind of operate on premise. Okay, so Suresh, so there are ways kind of where this security is being managed, and enterprises are okay kind of moving into the cloud environment.
Yeah, got it, bro. Got it.
Sure. Just a second. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now, yeah, I was talking about data engineering, then I gave you some functional insight of what a data engineer does, an end-to-end process. What he does, he transform the raw data, transform it into a useful insights. Now let us discuss some of the tools that are actually being used here. Okay. Um, there is one kind of a important thing that you need to understand on the cloud side. Okay, you are now able to storage enormous amount of data. Okay, that is one kind of and the data storage has been cheaper and much cheaper. Okay, and that's the reason the companies do not wanted to leave any of the data. Okay, and they wanted everything into their like a kind of a cloud environment. Okay, sorry, someone is having any question? Yeah. Okay, and so they are dropping, or I should say they are kind of extracting that raw data and kind of dumping that in something called data lakes. So now people are having something called data lakes. Okay, and now this has transformed to a delta lake and all that, so we can discuss that, but I will still say that people uh, started, or the enterprises or the company started extracting every data that is generated, and they wanted to, they're keeping it in the storage. So they are unsure at this point of time whether it will be useful or not, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to safeguard the data that has been generated, and they are storing everything into something called data lakes. Okay, so why am I talking about this data lake? So we have something called Azure Data Lake, in which we'll be talking about the ingestion process. Okay, and this ingestion process, okay, in ingestion process. So this process, what I'm talking about, is coordinated using something called Azure Data Factory. Okay, so this is one important tool that a data engineer should kind of have, or I should say, he should understand the entire. Sorry, sorry, can you mute yourself, please? Okay, so I was talking about the data ingestion. Okay, so data ingestion process that I'm talking about, right? So so this is kind of a tool, or I should say one of the Azure service, Azure Data Factory. Okay, we make use of this Azure Data Factory and kind of move the data from source to the data lake. So when I say, I will say source extraction. Please, you have to kind of understand or make usage of these terms, source extraction. Okay, and this is coordinated using Azure Data Factory. Okay, and we dump that data into data lake. Okay, so now you might have a question: is this it? No, we are just dumping the raw data only. Okay, there is few more things to it. Okay, this is just the raw data that we are trying to extract and just push it to the data lake. Okay, now after this ingestion process that I'm talking about here, okay, let me just move this and merge center, and this is one process. Okay, this is the ingestion process. So we will in this session, or I should say in this training, what we'll do is we will try to kind of understand how to connecting to a different sources. Okay, and using data factory, we will dump the data into the data lake. Okay, so this is the ingestion process. Now you got the data in the data lake. Okay, and now sorry, can you people
Ingestion process will getting data.
sorry, who is this?
Ingestion process will getting the data. What is the meaning of ingestion?
Yes, ingestion process is uh, like suppose you have some data in some website. Consider that you have some raw data in some website. Okay, across some web or some files somewhere. Okay, and you are trying to actually bring it into your data lake, your company's data lake. So you're trying to actually extract, pick that data up and ingest into data lake. So that's why I was mentioning source extraction to data lake. So this process is called ingestion process, where we are trying to extract the data and ingest it into our data lake. Okay,
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
yeah, and now comes the actual transformation. Okay, so now let me just okay, so here we have the data into the data lake now, right? Okay, now using some, okay, there'll be some tools, right? Like suppose think of a scenario that you're having data factory here. Okay, now so earlier we used to have some, I mean even now we have something called Databricks clusters. Okay, earlier we used to make use of Databricks cluster. Okay, now there is something called Azure data mapping flows. So using that we have been doing that, but let me also tell you, like we can make use of something called Databricks. We can spin up a Databricks cluster. Okay, and try to transform the data and publish that transform data into something called either a data lake, okay, or SQL server, or you can make it available, or you can directly kind of uh, uh, make it available or push that data into an Azure analysis services. Okay, or you can even, there is something called Synapse recently, Synapse Analytics. Okay, now we are actually now trying to get closer to the business. Okay, now we are getting to the layer where the actual business starts using it. Okay, because now the raw data is now getting transformed. Okay, now I am saying transformed, I'm simply saying transformed, but that is getting transformed using something called Databricks. Okay, or or okay, or mapping data flows. Okay, in this training session we will kind of take a scenario of this end-to-end process, right? Right from the source to the data lake, and from the data lake pick that up, transform it using Databricks notebooks, okay, or a mapping data flow, and trying to push that data or publish that data into a SQL server or into a data lake for the further consumption. Okay, so you might have a question. So you're saying like now you have transformed and you're saying like you're closer to business. Why are we talking about getting closer to business here, right? So so the next layer, I have to talk about the next layer here. Okay, The next layer is okay. That would be kind of a presentation layer. Okay, so the presentation layer. So this is where the actual insights, the business insight and everything kind of comes in. So so we will talk something related to Power BI and trying to connect to one of the services like SQL Server or analysis services and try to showcase that entire kind of an end-to-end process or the reporting that I have shown you, right? Something like that, how to visualize the same in Power BI. So this is a kind of an end-to-end process that you're seeing here. You're trying to ingest the data, you're trying to transform the data, okay, and basically you're trying to storage the storage being used. So you are transforming the data, but you have to store it somewhere, right? So we are talking about the storage of data happens in one of these resources. See, when I am talking about this, I'm talking about the Azure stack only. A data lake is on an Azure. I'll in just some time I'll show you all these services on the my Azure portal. Okay, and analysis services, and finally the presentation layer, right? So the presentation layer, what it does. So now the data that you have is kind of a present in data lake or a SQL server or analysis services. So one of the service, okay, when I'm talking about these many kind of stuff, please do not get confused. It depending upon the different business need, right? You can have the data into its respective target source. Okay, that depends, right? What a organization opts for. Yeah, so some organization these days, okay, they still kind of transforming the data and again storing it in the data lake only, because they're still not sure how the data can be really useful. So what they're trying to do is, instead of going for SQL server or a data lake, instead of going for a SQL server, which is a kind of a costly affair compared to data lake, so they are still trying to keep that in a data lake itself. Okay, so we will also during the session try to understand what are the different price differences that we have, and what could be the better storage formats in case of different scenarios. So all that discussion, so that discussion will come under best
Yes,
practices.
yes, I have one doubt. If any other kind of storage available right now, like blob or any other storage, what are the storage available in Azure?
Yeah, when I'm talking about data lake and all that, right? So I'm talking about the actual flavors of Azure Blob, Azure containers, and all that. So in the Azure Blob itself, we have something called V1 and V2, right? So V1 was the earlier version. V2 is the which actually supports the hierarchical namespace. And uh, just to also let you know that this particular services that I told you are kind of a some sources. There are enormous number of sources, or enormous number of target storage. You can also store it in Cosmos DB, which is a document DB. Okay, you can, as you said, you can just store it in as a binary object, and that file as a binary object into Azure Blob. Okay, so you can storage into different containers or tables. It can be anything, but this again depends upon your company's interest, right? As I told you, each resource will have its own pricing. Okay, saving everything into a lake is a kind of a price effective, but that again might require some kind of a some work later on to consume it. And after that it will be SQL server, okay, where we can ramp up and ramp down, but still it's costlier than data lake. Analysis services a little costlier than SQL server, and Synapse and Cosmos. So everything has its own kind of a pricing tiers. Okay, so but there are huge number of options that are available for storage. Okay, now there is also something about I was telling about the Power BI, right? So basically we develop this we have some desktop application where we make use of the desktop application, create reporting on top of this source, okay, and we develop dashboards slash reports. Okay, we create dashboards using reports. Okay, so this would be kind of a presentation layer that I'm talking about. Okay, so this complete end-to-end process of this, starting from raw extraction, then to transform, then to presentation. So I have been talking about some tools here, right? One was Azure Data Factory, then I was talking about Databricks, I was talking about mapping data flows, and I was talking about SQL Server. Okay, so the transformations can also happen within the SQL Server also, and the orchestrator would be the Azure Data Factory. And finally, the data that you have, you might have to present that into reporting and dashboards. Okay, so this is a kind of an end-to-end process that we actually usually, a data engineer would be capable of he should be capable of understanding, and as well as kind of maintain this process. So it starts all the way from source extraction, right? So you need to have some endpoints, or you need to understand from which files that it is coming from, whether is it coming from some website, or you need to do some web scraping and extract those results, or is it some kind of Oracle database that you wanted to transform and finally push it into some data lake. So it all depends upon the scenario that we have. Okay, that scenario can be anything, but we will discuss one particular scenario, like extracting from a kind of a blob itself, or maybe take one any source, right? Like some files which are present in some Azure blob, or it is somewhere stored in some website, or we are trying to extract the data from some a website has some important information, and we are trying to extract that information by using some web scraping. Okay, or you're trying to extract the data from a API. Okay, so these are the different scenarios that are available. We can pick one scenario and kind of understand this end-to-end process. But let me tell you, this is more of on the development side, and even for the development you definitely need some kind of a process, right? So you're building this, right? You need to build this, and you need to store everything into some code. So a code repository is needed, isn't it? So you can either store that code in something called GitHub, or you can also store it in Azure DevOps. So when I say Azure DevOps, this is a tool. Okay, I mean basically it's a web tool where we actually kind of store that. We have a repository of code, or there will be some organization. So we will make you understand how to kind of create, how to start your development process, right? So basically how the code is getting managed, right? There are in when you are in an organization, okay, there'll be just not you, right? That you can do whatever you want. Okay, there should be some process that should be there. That means you'll be taking some feature branches, right? You will be taking some code repo management. How do we actually do that? So we will pick one of the tool, and we will actually understand how to actually manage this code repository. Okay, and once this code repository is done, okay, there should be a process where actually you have to understand how to deploy it, right? So when I say Azure Data Factory or any other resource, right, so it will have its own way of getting deployed. Okay, so that is where ARM templates come into picture. Okay, we have for the deployment purposes, so we will create one uh, pipelines, deployment pipelines, that is we call as CI/CD pipelines, right? Deployment pipelines. Okay, we will make use of this ARM templates. We'll create those deployment pipelines and kind of make you understand how to move the code across environments. Okay, so yeah, so as a part of this training, we'll also cover this end-to-end process and as well as the best practices and GitHub, how to manage the GitHub and Azure DevOps, and then creating deployment pipelines using ARM templates. And yeah, so this is what we kind of cover. And apart from that, we will also try to understand how to create a Databricks cluster, as I mentioned, right, using notebook. Okay, how to actually transform the data that we have from source using PySpark. Okay, we will mount that kind of a storage, and then we'll try to extract that information and create tables, do some transformation, and finally publish it into SQL Server or whatever target that we have. Okay, so now let me quickly also show you some of the resources that I'm talking about. So this is my Azure portal. Okay, so whenever you also try to create your own portal or you try to create your own subscription, right? So basically, Azure offers a kind of a $200 credit when you actually initially sign up. So that would be good enough for you to actually kickstart and practice the demos that you have. Okay. So within that, if you see the different sources that are available, I'll just try to show you. This is one Azure machine learning experiment. Let me just, okay, so storage account, but this is a classic one. That means it is a V1 version. Okay, and we have some SQL databases that will be present. Okay, then I will explain you about what is this resource groups and all that. If you're already aware, you might have already got what I'm talking about, but if you're unsure, I will try to explain all the basics with respect to Azure. How do we actually create this and kind of create go ahead and create a subscription, and then this is my kind of a play area. Okay, that's why you might be seeing with different names and all that, but you will be primarily be working on data factories and then on the SQL and creating of the blobs. Okay, creating on end-to-end scenario, and you can see the Databricks cluster here. Okay, Azure Databricks service. So everything is a service in Azure. Okay, everything is a service in Azure, and I will try to explain all that. Basically, what should be covered with respect to starting from creation of a subscription, taking that demo account. So demo account in the sense, you will get some demo credits from Azure to actually practice and all that. So, but for that, we might require, you need to require to sign up for that and kind of have some live ID, and you need to perform all that. Okay, then I'll also show you something called a key vault. Okay, so basically the security side of it, right? So you might have a few of the things where you wanted to keep it as a secret, like suppose the authentications, like the username and passwords. So those are something that are stored in something called key vault service. Okay, so we'll also see what is that key vault and how to configure that key vault and kind of get the data from the secrets that we store and all that. Okay, so apart from the ones that I'm mentioning here, so these are some kind of an additional ones on a practical world. Okay, on a practical world, what actually enterprises do or make use of these services in kind of performing their end-to-end process. Okay, so yeah, this is what I just wanted to show you about. And yeah, I was also talking about the analysis services, right? So I did not have any analysis services created because just keeping that analysis services would itself kind of a cost. So apart from this, we will also see something about the cost management, and that will come under the best practices that we have. So this is information if you are a kind of a owner of your subscription, you will be able to see what is cost management. But in the actual world, so that means in the actual world means in the enterprises, there'll be separate administrators for Microsoft Azure subscription administrators to whom this cost management will be assigned to. But at all times you have your own kind of a voice to voice out that there is a better process that you can work out with, and you can stop the resources and kind of a save money, right? So basically, why are we actually moving to cloud? The sole reason is get a better control of the expenditures, IT expenditures, IT infra maintenance and all that, right? So this cost management will also be a kind of a critical one. Okay, and there could be some kind of recommendations that you might need to give as a data engineer, that to kind of save some money to your company, right? So maybe something like you have some Azure analysis services pinned up, okay, but that is not in use during your night time, or I should say it is in use only during some GMT time, right? So we should schedule our pipelines, or we should kind of exercise a kind of a schedule so that it actually trims down, that means on the pricing tier. Like for example, I'll take one SQL database. Okay, let's go and take one SQL database. Okay, where are we having? Okay, let me see. Okay, I have a SQL database. Okay. Okay, I went to a database. Let me go to the server here. Okay, you can see here that what are the different databases available here. Okay, now DTU, let me just let me go to some adventure works basic. You can see the pricing tier here. It says basic, compute and storage. Okay, so you can see here service tier. So this basically gives you like how your database should operate, how efficient, or if you throw in more number of DTUs, right, data throughput units, your database can work even faster. Okay, but I am just going for my basic tier, considering that I'm using this only for my demo purposes, but not at enterprise scale. But if you really want it at enterprise scale, so you can go for different tiers. You can see estimated cost per month 32,000. Okay, it can go till that level. And if you try to increase this database max size and all that, this will even increase a bit. But this is for premium. That means if you are going for a high intensive loads, okay, then will usually go for this kind of a service tier. But for our purpose, okay, or for the demo purposes, we need not go for that. It's more of like a basic tier that we can go for the demo purposes. But I'm just letting you know, this is how you will have options to scale up and scale down. Okay, so that is where you can actually save some money to your enterprises. Okay, now if you see all this, so earlier if you have to really procure a SQL database, it is a Herculean task. That means you have to purchase the server, you have to configure, you need to have a someone from the infra setup, from the networking, everything. There are many things, but these are all not needed. And with just a kind of a mere amount of 352 rupees per month, okay, you are at least able to get the feel of what how a SQL database looks like, and you can also operate on that. So that's the level of flexibility or kind of visibility that cloud brings you. So that brings you actually control or the power to actually manage things. And that's the reason we are learning here in the data engineering session, and that too on Azure Data Engineering. Okay. So yeah, this is it. So I just wanted to give you an end-to-end process of what will be covered here, what are the tools that we'll be going to discuss, and what are the other things that you need to start looking at. So that means you need to set your perspective in a different manner. Okay, so be it whether you join or not, but I'm telling you, you have to have a when you are moving into cloud, okay, you should start thinking how entrepreneurs think like, right? So you should give a thought on how the organizations are really thinking on. Okay, you should start thinking of optimization. Okay, so uh, don't say that okay, I'm still a developer, you want me to think these many things. Yes, these are the ones that even enterprises are looking out for. Okay, just not on the database side, but you need to have an overview of what's actually happening, what it actually means to save money and all that. Okay, so with this I just open up for questions. You can ask me different questions that you have.
Hi, Ravikant. I have a quick question. This is
Yeah,
Raj.
go ahead.
Hi.
Raj.
So I have a couple of questions. The first one is, what kind of the prerequisites required for this to data engineer?
To appear to this course.
Yes. What are the prerequisites?
Okay, so if you are starting afresh, may I know if you're already working or you are
Uh,
kind of a
I'm already working, but I work as a DevOps engineer. So I have no idea
okay.
about any kind of codes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So do you
Okay.
think that being a DevOps engineer will be having any added advantage?
Uh, th- um, so if you really wanted to understand the things on the so you are working as a Azure DevOps, or I
Azure
mean
DevOps.
basically what are the tools? Yeah, okay, okay. So
I work on the CI/CD pipelines and the maintaining and all that kind of stuff.
right. Okay. So I would say that, see, currently in your particular field that you are currently in, right? I think you are already an expert in Azure configuring the CI/CD pipelines and all. But if you really wanted to gain some insight on what actually happens on the data side, or maybe when you are up the ladder, that means you're moving up the ladder. It's just not, you need to expand your horizon, right? It's just not you are limiting yourself to only CI/CD, and you might have to get into a things where you need to understand what's happening. So if someone says, okay, so this CI/CD pipeline that we are doing, that is for some ARM template deployment for the Azure Data Factory. Okay, but uh, in some time you might have to understand what it actually does, what is, from where to where the data is bringing, or what is that source database, that is source extraction, how it is kind of happening. uh, uh, so you if you wanted to kind of an explore on the things out, what is happening on the data side, what actually happens on the transformation side, what is actually how this is getting transformed at scale. uh, okay, so then this course is kind of an app for you. But if you're looking only for some kind of a DevOps more expertise, this will not be for you.
Great. So what kind of prerequisites are required? Because I don't know any kind of SQL or Python or Power BI.
Okay, let me just give you uh, this doesn't actually require a complete overview, or a basic study of what is a table, right? How data is getting stored, or if you have an understanding of how an Excel works, right? So basically in an Excel spreadsheet, you understand that the rows, the columns, right? So that's a basic relational database. You should yeah, you'd have an understanding of what how a relational database looks like, and you can actually work that out. Maybe during our sessions, right, what we'll actually try to do is we'll try to cover on some demos. Okay, when we are at the basic demos, you can suppose if you have a doubt on what a table looks like, or what is the format for creation of table. Okay, so this is something that you can do some self study on. Okay, and you need not actually be an expert in writing SQL queries and all. Okay, that is not the kind of a prerequisite and can stop you there. Okay, so what I say is, even if you do not know anything on the SQL side, you can still opt for this, but it would need some efforts from your end too. Okay, if you are ready to willing to give those efforts with respect to doing some self study, and if you still have any doubts, right, we can connect one-to-one, and we can have some kind of a session, off session, and then we can have that discussed too.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good to me. So you're saying that in the real life scenario, Python and SQL should be learned. Not now at this moment in this duration of this class, but in the future it is required to write a complex kind of codes.
Yeah, see, when you say Python, right, so Python, you should understand the basic syntax of OOPS. You know, OOPS concepts and all that, right? Like object oriented concepts, where you create an object, you refer with dots with some methods, you create a class. So that is what actually even Python means. But Python has a different libraries, different set of modules, and we'll be using only some set of modules here. Okay, so you need not learn the entire Python, but you need to understand how it operates. Okay, you need to you should be in a situation, suppose if you see someone MSDN documentation, or he will say like implement this code snippet. Okay, you should be in a situation to understand, suppose if there is a simple equation, right, and that's not a very difficult task. Suppose if it say var equal to 1, and there is some logic which actually increments var equal to var plus 1, and these are some kind of a looping things that happen. Or if you say, if you create a method, or you should if you create kind of an object. Okay, what I'm trying to say is, it is simple. You need to understand the basic simple from side of the implementation side, but you need not get into a depth of it. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
And the main thing that you need to have is, you need to have some SQL exposure, right? So that's what I'm talking about. What is a table? What is a what is it internally called? Tables, rows, some keys that we'll be discussing about. We'll be talking about some warehousing concepts. Okay, how in real world are the data actually getting stored? Okay, you might need to spend some time in understanding that. Okay, but I would still say that Python is not a complete kind of a very much essential, but just try to understand the basic syntax and you should be good with that.
Yeah, sir. I am come from the .NET background. So
Okay.
other than that, Python language can use any other languages can use for an Azure data science.
Okay, so we are talking about the data engineering part here, and
Yeah.
see, from the Azure side, right? Uh, Nowadays what is happening is, it is just not Python that comes into the picture. So using there will be something called magic commands. Okay, so depending upon the scenario, okay, if you just do a percentile SQL, and you can write your code either in Python, or you can have to simply say Python, and you can write your Python code. So that's the level of flexibility that it is offering. But in few scenarios it is also offering C# also. Okay, but when you already know about C#, I don't think so Python is a much difficult for you, or you'll be in a situation to easily understand Python. That's what I feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am
And what
basically from
about
I am trained on
yeah? And what
C#.
about the Spice Spark difference? Is it very much difference from the Python, or Spice Spark is a base derived from Python?
I'll tell you. I'll tell you. So there is something called Spark. Okay, uh, and this is nothing but Apache Spark. Okay, and this Spark gives the flexibility of writing the code either in Scala, either in Python. Okay, and this combination of Spark and Python is nothing but PySpark. Okay, only thing is, suppose there'll be a scenario where you need to actually mount, or I should say, create one data frame. Simply think like data frame is like a table. Okay, data frame. Okay, we will make use of libraries that are available in the PySpark, and we'll create a data frame. Okay, so just by looking at the code here, you can actually understand. Okay, the syntax and everything would be a Python syntax, but the libraries or the methods and all that, right, that is what is called as PySpark. Okay, and for the data engineering purposes, we usually create data frames or create some temporary views and all that, with the help of PySpark and its methods. Okay, that is what PySpark actually means, and it is not a separate language other than Python. It's just Python, but it has the flavors, or the Spark flavor. So you might have another confusion, what is Spark? Okay, let me tell you, this Spark is one kind of a framework. Okay, one kind of framework which has high performance compared to any other tools in existing in the current world. Okay, it has and that's the reason why this Databricks and everything, the back end of Databricks is nothing but Spark, and Apache Spark cluster runs into this. So I think let me also just give a very quick overview here. Sorry. Yeah. So this is the Spark context. So we'll try to create a Spark context here. Okay, don't worry too much about it, but I'm just trying to explain you some kind of a framework or how it actually happens. Okay, uh, think like so this is a kind of a mashup between the Python and Spark, and from the backend, Spark actually helps us in getting the things done faster. Okay, Spark is a framework. Okay, so did I answer your question? I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes.
any other questions?
So, like in a Apache PySpark, what are the framework available in market as of now? If,
What is a framework?
yeah, what are the like as you mentioned, no, right now, so Apache Spark is the most fastest one right now you are using.
Mhm.
Apart from that, any other framework we have in market?
Uh, we have many things, and they do have a kind of a. You might have heard about Kafka, Apache Kafka. So, see, depending upon the scenario, they'll be used. Like suppose if it is kind of a streaming service, okay, or some kind of a streaming data is coming in, then you will go for Apache Kafka because it supports the messaging protocol. The Apache Kafka supports messaging protocol. So that means MQTT and all that. I mean, if you are aware, it's okay. But just to let you know, if you have some IoT devices or something, right? So there'll be a process where it actually takes in the data from that IoT devices in a streaming manner. Okay, in that case, we'll be looking out. They'll be looking out for Apache Kafka. Okay,
Oh,
and there is something called
okay.
Apache Airflow. Okay, there are many tools. Okay, some are enterprise grade, some are kind of a open framework, depending upon the company's interest, or depending upon the company's budget on the project, and depending upon how the company wants to operate, right? It all depends. So if you remember, there is something called Confluent. Okay, there's something called Confluent, where it runs also on the back end, but it is enterprise grade. Okay, it's a web-based tool. It's enterprise grade. It similarly operates similar to Apache Kafka, but it had added some flavors to the open framework that Apache had offered, and it had developed, it had matured itself into a new tool. So that is how I mean things are available in market, and there are vast number of tools. Okay, but you need to understand one thing: there'll be tools will always keep changing, but there'll be the concepts, right? The concepts that we actually exercise on. That means when we are talking about okay, when we're talking about data engineering concepts or transformations or extractions, so these are the common terms that are being used, so that will be used across no matter which tool changes. Okay, but you need to understand that context, like how is it getting it extracted, what are the different concepts, like suppose if you have to create a data warehouse, what you need to have, you need to have some dimensions, you need to have some facts, so fact tables. Okay, how do you ingest that data? So the tool might change, but the underlying backend functionality, right, that would be the same. Okay, any other
Yeah, okay,
questions?
fine.
Yeah, hi. It's a Satish here. Just I
Yeah,
want
hi
to understand,
Satish.
like you will be covering Azure, yeah, you will be covering ADF and Databricks and data lakes,
Yes,
correct?
Databricks and data lakes,
Okay.
and yeah, I will
Uh,
also try to showcase a demo how you actually bring in that data in a Power BI report also.
yeah, and will be like ADF is also you are covering completely.
Yes,
Azure Data.
ADF is the primary. Yeah,
Okay, okay. How much duration it will be? Like,
it will be around 25 to 30 classes.
okay. Yeah,
So
and
it
one more,
might be
I
spanning around maybe 45 days. I mean, we'll be having sessions during weekdays.
okay. And one more, like when I tried logging to the portal of the Azure one, I think my previously I was used free of services. I think it's not allowing to
Yeah,
create new
you
one.
need to use
So
a
you
you need to use a new email ID or new live ID, and then it should work. Create it
no, even
using
I tried.
new.
Yeah,
Mhm.
even I tried with new ID also. It's not working. Even I tried with that payment subscription also. Still, it was not
Okay,
working. I think so.
fine.
There is
I
something
mean,
problem.
okay, and then yeah, then we can't do anything about it. But maybe you might have to follow up with some support or anything. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, in case if that is the case.
Okay. Yeah, because for doing practical, we need like log into their sites. Then only it will have a helpful.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. That's only how. Yeah. Thank you.
sure. Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
This is Kumar here. I just have one last question.
Yes,
Do
Kumar.
we also cover Synaptics Analytics over here as part of the course?
Synapse Analytics. Yeah. Okay. Uh, so that wouldn't be in detail because Synapse Analytics, if you open up the portal or the Synapse Studio, right, you will actually see a similar kind of a structure of creating the pipelines and everything. It is kind of a much similar to what we do in the data factory itself. Okay, but I can give you one session on Synapse Analytics, like what is that extra or what is that additional features that it offers. So that can be covered in couple of sessions for Azure Synapse. And what could be the special cases that we can really go for Azure Synapse Analytics?
Okay, so do organizations prefer using this service or no? Like most of the organizations.
Um, Most of the organizations, see, it depends upon the priority. Okay, just like I said, if you want to spend some expenditure or you are working something you wanted to be much more performant, right, then I saw people kind of going for Synapse. And Synapse has some unique features with respect to linking few of the Azure services. I think that is also where the Synapse is kind of having a little advantage there, but it all depends upon how much price they are trying to invest in. Because see, Azure Data Factory or anything, right, when it actually not running, it doesn't actually create any kind of a cause any kind of a cost for you. But on the other side, the Synapse has some limitations, or I should say from the pricing end, it's slightly pricey over to the Data Factory. But in what scenarios and all that, I'm trying to explore few things on that. I can kind of explore that thing and can kind of get back to you on that.
Okay, so my basic understanding was that if I put my profile as a data engineer and without
Mhm.
Synaptics, so is organizations going to hire me without this Synaptics?
Yes, why not?
Okay, okay. I mean, just want to understand that. What all it is
Yeah,
something they are looking for to hire.
yeah. But let me tell you, the concept, or I should say, the pipelines that you build, that will be exactly similar to what you build also in the Azure Data Factory. And if you had to really tell yourself that or present yourself that you really know, definitely you can say yes, and that is something that we have been already been doing in Azure Data Factory. But you can also say that this has some additional features which come in handy during situations or scenarios like this, and you can launch yourself. That shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, yeah, thanks. And post the course, like, what do we have any support from you, but we need some help?
Sorry, what help? Sorry, I didn't get that. What is that last part?
Post completion of the course, if at all we need some help regarding the technical aspect, so will you be available for us?
Uh, yes, I mean, if you have anything specific, right? So even the last batch that I took, whoever is there, and they do approach me in kind of asking me like, how should I present myself as a data engineer, right? So yeah, we can have a one-to-one maybe, or a group session too, and we can discuss on that. But
Yeah,
post
that's
support,
totally
right,
nice.
you can maybe get in touch with our representatives also, and they can kind of arrange a session if you want. So we did had kind of a 2 sessions even after completing that, because the other batch had some doubts. We did and they requested specifically for some kind of a separate some other resources, like Azure machine learning and all that. Even I showcased a demo on that also. But if you are looking something specific, like, okay, let's discuss about this scenario, yeah, I am ready to explore. See, only thing is, this is a very fast moving area. Okay. And when I say fast moving, every now and then there'll be some kind of a new feature getting launched. Okay. And by the time I close one batch, okay, a new features keep on coming. Okay. We should have that kind of open mind to actually also understand what is this new feature, in what scenario that it can be used and all. Okay. But apart from that, if you are really kind of struggling with respect to any of the concept or any kind of an aspect, okay, so I will definitely add my perspective there in kind of making you understand in what scenarios that this feature or a functionality, or if you're not understanding in what scenario this resource or this Azure resource is not being used, you can definitely ask me that.
Yeah, thanks. Got it. Yeah, thank you so much.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining the session. Yeah.
Ravikant, just a minute. When the next section will allow will continue session, is there any plan for this one?
As of now, there is no plan for that. Maybe you can just, I think, the meeting organizer is asking for some information, right? Maybe you can provide that, and then probably they will check on that. So, are you saying that
Oh,
you wanted to have a? Did you miss anything in
yeah.
the current session?
Not in the current session. I just want to the practical implementation of the data factories and so ADF like things, how they're all the how pipelines creating like that. I want to be need to be take care on that session.
Okay, let me just.
Is if you have any other videos like is your previous videos, can you able to share with us?
You can get in touch with the organizer. Okay, there are many sessions that I gave already, and yeah, she will kind of assist you in that. She can provide you some of the
Mm,
sessions data.
okay.
Okay, but yeah, you can see the activities that I created earlier for a demo purpose. Okay, yeah, you can get in touch with the organizer and you give that concern or your query, and definitely that would be answered to you. And she can provide you the earlier sessions that I gave, and that would kind of make you understand what you are going to learn and all. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day
Thank.
ahead. Bye. Happy weekend.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.